My marathon cover made my bio mom find me for closure. Years later, her kids saw the shoebox labeled Keep. The first time my biological mother saw my face as an adult, it wasn't in a living room. It was on a magazine rack at a gas station, smeared with fingerprints and coffee steam. I had won nothing, just finished my first marathon with my hands on my knees and salt dried on my cheeks. The local editor liked the photo because it looked like a person letting the world back in. They put Noah Fincher finishes first marathon under it, even though I was somewhere in the middle of the pack. 2 days later, an email slipped past my spam filter with a subject line that sounded like a switch being flipped. Just once. The sender was Janet Willis, a name I didn't know, but my bones did. She wrote 3 sentences. She'd seen the cover at a checkout line. She was glad I was doing well. Could we meet just once for closure? It read like someone asking to borrow a book they had never admitted existed. That we met in a coffee shop that had more plants than seats. She was early and chose a corner where the light hit her like it was picking sides. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask about the race. She said my first name like she was testing the temperature of water, then slid a folded card across the table with her number and a line that kept her safe and me small. This is just for peace. No last names. No questions. The cup between us fogged and cleared, like a window refusing to commit. That I asked about Tom, the man whose first name appears in a paragraph of the adoption file like a ripped label. She took a long sip, shook her head, and said, "That was complicated." When I asked which hospital I was born in, she changed the subject to the weather. When I asked for a photo of me as a baby, she said she didn't keep mementos from that chapter. It felt like interviewing a house that had been staged and locked at the same time. To the door, she said, "I'm proud of you." The way people read teleprompters, steady, distant, no ad-libs. Then she touched my arm like a farewell to a stranger and added, "Please don't reach out to the kids. They don't know." The word kids hit harder than the plan. She had built a life that didn't need me to be true. My job, apparently, was to be a rumor that never learned to talk. I went home and opened the adoption file I keep in an old shoebox, the one with more photocopies than answers. My name typed in a font from another decade. A discharge date with a smudge through the last digit. A caseworker's signature that looked like a heartbeat caught in a graph. I pressed the papers flat and realized closure was the wrong word for what she wanted. Containment was closer. That we didn't speak again for years. That didn't stop the story from getting bigger. It didn't happen online. It happened in dust. 3 years after that coffee, a storm knocked out half the power on Janet Street. Neighbors helped each other dig out extension cords and stack wet boxes in garages. In one of those garages, on a high shelf behind camping gear, a plastic tote split at the corner. A stack of old magazines slid like a slow avalanche. On top, my marathon cover, salt on my cheeks, name in block letters. Someone had written "Keep" in the corner with a fading pen. The next ping on my phone wasn't from Janet. It was from Sophie Willis. Subject line, "I think we're related." She'd found my email through the Marathon newsletter archives. Her note was careful and kind. She'd seen a magazine at home with my photo and Janet's maiden name scribbled on a post-it. She had a brother, Max. They had questions they weren't allowed to ask. Would I meet them, just the two of them, for coffee? I said yes and chose a quiet diner that plays old music and refills without making a show of it. Sophie walked in with the magazine in a Ziploc like evidence you don't want to wrinkle. Max followed, taller than me, eyes doing the math of faces. We sat in a booth that had seen every kind of truth and none of the drama. They didn't waste the first minutes. "Did you know about us?" Sophie asked. Her voice had that steady edge people grow when they are done being handled. I told them what I knew and what I didn't. A first coffee with their mother, a file with missing pieces, a name, Tom, that felt like a door without a handle. I did not ask them to pick sides. I didn't bring a speech. I brought copies, the page from my adoption file with the case number, the discharge date with the smudge, a note from the agency listing Janet's age and counting the month I was born. Sophie listened like a reporter. Max stared at the discharge date and whispered, "That's the week Mom was at Aunt Carol's." The air between us changed shape. Sophie put the magazine on the table, face down, and said, "We can't pretend we didn't see this." We set a plan that fit in 4 lines. We'd meet again for dinner in a public place. They'd invite their parents if they wanted. I'd bring everything I had and keep it calm. We shook on calm because anger loves to be the main character, and I refused to give it the script. The invitation went out. Janet said no at first, then fine, just to end rumors. Tom didn't answer until the day of. Sending a terse, "We'll be there." I arrived early at a family-style place with bright lights and no corners to hide in. I put the file folder on the seat beside me like a seatbelt for the night. Sophie and Max came in together, nervous and brave. Janet followed, polished, smile zipped to the exact angle that says, "This is under control." Tom brought the weather of a man who prefers problems go back in drawers. We made small talk that felt like a waiting room. The server set down water and the kind of bread that flakes. Then Sophie reached for the magazine in her bag and set it between the plates, my face up, the word "keep" glinting under the light. "Why did you save this?" she asked, not unkind, not soft. Janet didn't look at the magazine. She looked at me. "Because he keeps sending things," she said, as if I had mailed my own photo to her house. It was the first lie of the night and the most efficient. Tom nodded like a man who backs up sound more than fact. I opened my folder and slid out 3 pages. The adoption summary, the agency letter, and a copy of Janet's first email to me with the subject, "Just once." I put them where the bread had been. "No one is here to make a scene," I said. "You asked for closure. Your kids asked for facts. These are mine." Janet's mouth pressed into a line people wear when they'd like a scene, but want you to be the one to cause it. "This is not accurate," she said, louder than the room wanted. "He contacted me. He's been telling stories." Sophie flinched like a cord had snapped. Max's jaw set. I didn't raise my voice. I pointed to timestamps and letterhead and the case number that ties to a building you can drive to and a file clerk who will stamp your copy without knowing any of your ghosts. "This is the order," I said quietly. "You saw me. You wrote. We met. Then you asked me to stay quiet. That's the graph." Janet leaned back and did the move of someone trying to make the table smaller by making their voice larger. "You are lying," she said to the room, like the room was the jury she thought she needed. "We were forced, we were confused, and now you are trying to ruin a life you don't understand." The word liar is a match. The trick is not giving it oxygen. I slid one more page across, the hospital list from that month, with 3 possible facilities, one circled because the discharge nurse's initials matched the loop on my form. "Tell me which hospital," I said. "We can start there." Tom exhaled like a tire. "Drop it," he told Sophie. It was the first thing he'd said all night that sounded like a father and not a PR manager. Sophie didn't drop it. She put her hand on the magazine and looked at her mother like a person looking in a mirror and deciding if it still belongs to them. "Were we ever going to know?" she asked. Janet didn't answer. She reached for her purse like there might be a cleaner version of the truth inside. The server asked about entrees. No one was hungry. We asked for boxes, for checks, for time. I tucked the file back into the folder and stood, not fast, not dramatic, just vertical. "I won't fight you in front of your kids," I said. "I won't disappear for them either." Sophie whispered thank you without moving her lips. Max kept his eyes on the circled hospital name like it was a road he could actually drive that we stepped into the parking lot where the air had more honesty than the room. My phone buzzed before I reached the car. It was an email from Janet, subject line enough. The body was short and sharp. "Do not contact my children again. We will tell them what they need to know." Below it, an older thread from Tom forwarded by accident, with 3 words that made the night colder. "Call him wrong." The thing about paper is it doesn't pick sides. It just keeps them. I didn't answer Janet's enough with heat. I answered with paper. 1 email, subject for Sophie and Max. What I can prove. I wrote the first line to them, not to their parents. "You don't owe me belief. You deserve facts." Then I attached 5 scans and kept my sentences small enough to stand. The agency summary with my case number and Janet's age and county. The discharge page with the smudged digit and the nurse's initials. The first email Janet sent me, subject just once, date stamped 2 days after the magazine. A log of our coffee date, cafe name, receipt. The time her number slid across the table. A hospital list from that month. 1 facility circled because the initials matched my form. No adjectives. No speeches. I told them I wouldn't contact them again unless they wrote first. I sent a copy to my own inbox so the server would remember even if people forgot. 2 hours later, My phone rang with a number from a town I knew only from the adoption file letterhead. I let it go to voicemail, then listened twice. The voice belonged to Marla Green, a nurse who had worked intake the year I was born. "I'm retired," she said, "but I still remember initials." She had seen Sophie's post asking for hospital names in a private group and connected the dots nobody wanted public. "If your discharge page shows LG in a loop, that's Linda Garvey, night shift, Memorial East. People think paper lies. Paper just needs a witness." I called back and put the phone on the table like a candle. Marla spoke like someone who knows what details can carry. She couldn't give me records. She could give me context. The month I was born, Memorial East handled 3 private adoptions. One involved a mother from Janet's County who used a short-stay name for privacy. Linda Garvey signed 2 of the discharge pages, the same LG loop I had in my file. "If you bring me that page," Marla said, "I can at least tell you if the format and stamps match our floor." People forget fonts are evidence. Before I could thank her, another email landed, this time from Tom. Subject: setting the record straight. He wrote like a man fixing a dent he could no longer ignore. "They hadn't hidden me," he said. "They had survived me." He claimed he never knew my birth date, then referenced the exact week stamped on my discharge. He said he never contacted me, then complained about "that first coffee you requested." His sentences tripped over each other, leaving footprints in 2 directions. 0.5 minutes later, Sophie replied to my original email with 2 words, "Got it." No hearts. No promises. A second ping followed from Max. "Thanks." The restraint read louder than any exclamation marks. They were collecting facts and keeping their hands off the scale. Good. This wasn't a courtroom. It was a kitchen where truth cooked slow. I took the file to a copy shop and made 1 clean set on heavier paper. I added a sticky note with the names Memorial East and Linda Garvey, LG, so Sophie and Max could see how the loops on my page matched the loops on Marla's memory. I didn't send it yet. I waited, because the next move shouldn't come from me. It came from Janet. Midnight. Subject line, final word. The email was a new story with old paint. She'd been coerced. She'd never seen my face. She'd never kept a single thing from that chapter. I read it twice, and then looked at the photo Sophie had taken of the garage tote, the magazine on top, my name in block letters, "Keep," in her mother's handwriting in the corner. "You can't keep what you never kept." I wrote a reply I never sent. Instead, I forwarded Janet's final word to myself, to Sophie, and to Max with no comment. Let timestamps argue with claims. Then I went to bed with the phone in another room and slept like a person who has finally learned which battles are won by silence. In the morning, my inbox held a single line from Sophie that read like a hinge. "Can you meet someone?" 15 minutes later, she sent a name I'd only seen once in the file, Aunt Carol, and a time. Aunt Carol had watched the Aunt Carol week from the inside. The week Janet had vanished from the house, the exact days my discharge page covered. "She'll talk," Sophie wrote. "She's tired." I printed 1 more copy of the discharge page and wrote LG at the top in pencil. If the paper had a witness in the present and a witness from the past, the room would finally stop letting the loudest voice call itself the truth. Aunt Carol's house smelled like lemon oil and old books, rooms that keep their own minutes. She met me at the door with a look I recognized from people who've decided to stop protecting the wrong thing. "Tea?" she asked, already boiling water. We sat at a kitchen table that had seen birthdays and storms, and she put both hands around her mug as if to steady the past long enough to speak it. "I remember the week," she said before I could ask. "Janet was here." Then she wasn't. She pointed to a wall calendar with brittle edges. April, 3 years after the ink had stopped being sold. She told me she was staying at a friend's too. "Think. Your discharge dates." She tapped the photocopy I'd brought, sit on the days she didn't sleep in her own bed. I slid over the page with the looped initials, LG, and the hospital list. Carol leaned in, smile of recognition without joy. "Memorial East," she said, like naming a street she still drives. "Your grandmother worked nights 3 blocks from there." We packed a bag. I watched Janet out the window and didn't ask questions I should have asked. She paused, then added, softer, "I was 19. We were all told questions were ungrateful." She stood, wiped her hands, disappeared into the hall closet, and returned with a shoebox the color of a thundercloud. "They told me to throw this away," she said, setting it on the table like a stone she was done carrying. Inside, Ticket stubs, church bulletins, a hospital parking stub stamped ME East, and a handful of photos. Janet at 19, staring sideways at the camera like it might guess for her. Beneath the top layer, wrapped in tissue, a Polaroid of a hospital bracelet with the name block whited out and a post-it in Janet's handwriting. The same slanted print Sophie had texted me from the garage. Keep. I didn't touch the Polaroid first. I touched the parking stub because stubs don't lie. They just wait. Memorial East. The same week. The same hours my discharge page was like a coat. Carol pressed a fingertip to the photo edge and exhaled like someone opening an attic window. She said it was better to forget, she murmured. But she wrote keep on anything that might prove she remembered. We scanned what we could on Carol's old printer, the kind that complains about ink but does the job anyway. I photographed the calendar month with my phone and circled the 4 nights Janet was at a friend's. We labeled each file with the date, source, and who held it. I thanked Carol for staying in the room with the truth long enough to let it take a seat on the way home. I sent Sophie and Max a folder link labeled What We Can Verify. Inside, the parking stub, the calendar picture, the Polaroid with keep, and a note in plain text. No conclusions. Just matches. Sophie replied with a single heart, and we see it. Max wrote, going to Memorial East, like a person who'd found the first turn on a map. The pushback arrived faster than dessert travels. An email from a law office. Representing Janet and Tom hit all 3 of our inboxes. Subject, cease harassment. It alleged I was stalking, misrepresenting records, and distressing a family. It offered a version of events already wobbling under its own adjectives. Our clients were not in the county that week. 1 sentence later, it threatened action if we contacted their minors again. Sophie is 20. Max is 19. Their minors line collapsed against the calendar photo, the parking stub timestamp, and the reality of 2 adults responding to an email they had requested. I didn't swing at the lie. I forwarded the letter to a new thread titled Counsel. All, added my adoption case number, and attached the scans. Please direct future correspondence here. I wrote. No contact with Sophie and Max unless they initiate. Then I included 1 sentence I knew a paralegal would appreciate. Note internal contradiction. Not in county that week versus Memorial East parking stub, attached, dated same week. Within an hour, Sophie sent a photo from the Memorial East records window, her reflection in the glass, a sign about hours, and a pamphlet for requesting historical admissions logs. Under it, her text, they can't erase a building. Max followed with a blurry shot of the nursing schedule posted in a hallway display, an old staff roster listing Garvey, LG, on nights that month. Paper found its witness, the AT dinner. My phone stayed face down. I ate slowly. Somewhere in town a copier warmed up for tomorrow. Janet and Tom could keep mailing adjectives. We had dates, initials, and a shoebox that had refused to be obedient. Before bed, I added a line to the folder notes the way you add a caption under a photograph to make sure the future doesn't forget what it's looking at. The story can be argued. The timestamps can't. Memorial East doesn't hand you history. It lets you verify it. The records clerk, elbows on the counter, a pencil behind her ear, wouldn't print anything, but she would look. I slid my discharge page across the glass, the corner reinforced with clear tape from a decade ago. She didn't read the names. She traced the typeface with her finger, nodded at the timestamp block in the lower right, and tapped the looped initials. We use that impact stamp on night discharges only, she said. And that loop is L. Garvey. I remember her. Left-handed loops always smudged the carbon. She pointed to the faint crescent where the ink bled. Yup, that's LG. She retrieved a specimen binder, the kind offices keep for training, flipped to 1990s forms, and laid a laminated sample under mine. Dates in the same box. The same faint gray line running down the margin from a misaligned copier. Fonts don't forget. She wouldn't say, this is yours. She did say, this matches us. Outside, under the awning where ambulances idle, my phone buzzed. Marla Green again, the retired intake nurse who remembered initials the way other people remember birthdays. Tell your clerk friend she's right, Marla said. Linda signed LG like a music note. Nights mostly. And we stamped East Wing. Discharges with that oval. You can see the oval, can't you? I could. Once someone names a shape, it refuses to be invisible. By lunch. Mr. Alvarez had the clerk's written confirmation that she inspected the page for format, stamp position, and style, and that it aligned with Memorial East's forms and night stamp protocol for that month. No names, all structure. He folded it into our file with the care of a person setting a hinge. Then came the email with teeth dulled by haste. Janet and Tom's attorney sent an final warning. Cease harassing communications. Stop contacting minors and acknowledge clients were out of state the week prior to your alleged dates. The phrase week prior sat there like a chair on a staircase. Wrong place, wrong height. In their last letter, they'd written, not in the county that week. Now it was the week before. Two walls at once. The room moved that I didn't argue tone. I opened my folder marked chronology and wrote the story the way time would tell it if it had a pen. Magazine cover. Date stamped at Janet's first email. Just once, 2 days later. Coffee receipt. The day after. Garage tote. Keep. Photo. Sophie's timestamp. Memorial East clerk note. Format/stamp alignment for the month I was discharged. Aunt Carol's calendar. For nights Janet was at a friend's. Same week as my discharged at ME East parking stub. Same week. Nursing roster display. L. Garvey, LG, on nights that month. No adjectives. No heat. Just dates that linked like teeth in a zippered AT 4:12 p.m. I sent one email to everyone who had touched this. Sophie, Max, Janet, Tom, Aunt Carol, Mr. Alvarez, and because paper deserves daylight, Janet's attorney. Subject, chronology, what is verifiable? The body was 12 sentences, each a line item, each with a date and a document. I attached a single PDF titled Scans, labeled, with arrows pointing to stamps and loops, and the word keep in Janet's hand. I ended with a sentence that wasn't a verdict, just a door. If anyone can supply a date-stamped document that contradicts these, I will add it to the file. I hit send and put the phone face down. 10 minutes later, the room split, quietly, like ice separating on a lake. Sophie replied first. We accept this timeline. Max, going back to talk to Carol with this. Aunt Carol, I am available to speak to counsel. From Janet came a paragraph about coercion and privacy and forgiveness, but none of those are dates. From Tom, a single sentence tripped on its own claim. We were out of state the week before that week. The week before appeared again, like a clock that won't agree with the wall. Mr. Alvarez replied with the kind of sentence that locks. A gate. Please provide any travel documentation for the exact dates listed in the attached chronology. At 6:01 p.m., Sophie sent me a photo of the family group chat. No commentary, just a screen where Janet wrote, "Do not engage with Noah's list. It's bait." Under it, Max typed, "It's dates." No one reacted. Sometimes an unreacted message is the loudest. We ate dinner standing up in the kitchen because chairs felt ceremonial and we were past ceremonies. I taped a printed copy of the chronology to the inside of a cabinet door where we keep spices. Not as a shrine, as a reference. Truth you can reach while cooking is truth you keep. Before bed, another email arrived from Memorial East. The clerk had checked the night shift stamp log for that month. The oval stamp with the shallow nick at the top, visible on my page, had been in service from March to late April, then replaced. My discharge page carried the nick. The stamp told time better than anyone in the thread that I forwarded the note to the same list, added an arrow to the nick in my scan, and wrote 3 words that felt like a finish line that didn't require cheering. Fonts. Stamps. Dates. The house stayed still enough to hear the refrigerator click off. Outside, nothing changed and everything had. Sophie asked to meet without parents. No cousins, no witnesses, just the two of us at a library table that smelled like paperbacks and hand sanitizer. She set down an envelope the way you set down a truth you're not sure you can carry alone. From Grandma Ruth, she said. She wrote it years ago. Mom kept it in a cookbook. I think that means she wanted it close and hidden at the same time. The letter was dated in the top right corner in Ruth's careful schoolteacher script. It wasn't melodrama. It was minutes. Janet stayed with Carol 4 nights while I worked the late shift near Memorial East, Ruth wrote. I took the bus home at dawn. One night, she asked for lotion for a bracelet rash. I told her not to scratch it or the ink would smudge. She underlined bracelet twice. At the bottom, a side note in parentheses. Carol, don't throw away the stub. ME East is your proof if anyone gets amnesia. Sophie watched my face the way people watch weather. I didn't show Mom, she said. This isn't about teams anymore. It's about dates. I slid the letter into a clear sleeve, lined the underlines with a yellow strip, and matched Ruth's 4 nights to Aunt Carol's calendar and the parking stub. The clicks lined up like teeth on a zipper. I didn't say gotcha. I said thank you. By late afternoon, the other shoe arrived dressed as a correction. Janet and Tom sent a mass email titled Clarifying Details. It was a new script with unnerving confidence. Noah is mistaken about his birth date. It was the 15th, not the 22nd. He's misreading an old template. We were out of state the week he claims. Attached, a cropped photo of a page I'd never seen. Ruled hospital stock with a line that read Baby Willis, 4/15, and a blur where the next field should be. They meant it as an eraser. They imported a shadow, because even in a cropped image, people forget what they're showing. The top margin revealed a form code I recognized from the Memorial East specimen binder, and 2 inches from the right edge, half cut, but legible enough, was the start of a room field. R2. Then the rest clipped out. Memorial East only used R2XX numbers on the East Wing postnatal floor the following week, after the stamp nick I had on my discharge page retired. If I had been a 15th, the oval stamp on my page wouldn't carry that nick. Fonts don't forget. Nicks don't either. I printed their attachment, overlaid it with my discharge scan, and grabbed a pen. Left side, their 4/15. Right side, my 22nd. Under both, Ruth's 4-night note, Carol's calendar, the ME East stub, the clerk's nick in service. Confirmation, and LG's loop that smudged like a moon on my carbon. I circled the R2 fragment and wrote, post 15th room range. I circled the nick and wrote, retired late April. 2 arrows. 1 conclusion. Their new date requires a stamp that didn't exist yet in a room that did not open until after my discharge. I didn't gloat. I built a 1-page explainer for Sophie and Max with 3 headings. Stamp window, room range, Ruth's nights. Each section got a single sentence and a scan. Oval nick in service through late April present on Noah's page. R2XX opened for postnatal week following the 15th appears on your parents' cropped photo. Ruth's 4 nights equals same week as discharge page date. I ended with, if there is a full, uncropped record contradicting this, please send it to counsel, all. Max wrote back first. R2 shows, good catch. Sophie followed with Grandma Ruth Trump's stories. 5 minutes later, Janet's attorney replied, not with proof, but with volume, stern words about selective interpretation, a threat of action, and a final flourish. Our clients will not be bullied into your timeline. The last sentence did the opposite of what it thought. It made the timeline the only thing standing still. At dusk, Marla called from a noisy diner. Quick tip, she said, voice smiling like a person who loves a clean hinge. If their image is a nursery log, we labeled those with R numbers only after the pediatric wing renovation mid-month. Before the 16th, nursery logs had N fields, different code. Tell your clerk friend to check the binder divider. It's right there. We checked. It was that I forwarded Marla's note to counsel. All, attached a photo of the binder divider. PRE Reno. In dash hashtag 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 slash post Reno. R2 hashtag hashtag hashtag. And said nothing else. Paper likes quiet.at10. My screen lit with a message from Aunt Carol. A grainy scan from the bottom of Ruth's letter-eyed. Missed. The part where teachers leave PS notes. PSI. Told Janet to write keep on anything she might. Later pretend not to recall. The Polaroid of the bracelet. The post-it on my magazine. The word keep in the same slanted hand. Memory had a handwriting sample that I laid everything out on the table. Ruth's letter, Carol's calendar. The stub, the binder photos, my discharge scan. Their cropped R2 and the 3 words that had carried me from noise to shape. Fonts. Stamps. Dates. The room stopped tilting. For the first time, I thought about sleep without defense in the same sentence. The request came from a polite inbox that loves carpets and conference water. Their attorney proposed a final meeting, promising a full file to clear the air. We picked a neutral office with glass walls that make lying feel crowded. I brought the folder that now clicked when you closed it. Ruth's letter, Carol's calendar, the ME East stub. The binder photos from Memorial East, my discharge scan with the oval nick. And the screenshot of their cropped 2-page that tried to move my birthday by a week. They went first. A stack of printouts slid across the table smelling like toner and urgency. On top, a cleaner version of the page they'd cropped before, now uncropped. You could read the whole header. Memorial East Nursery Log, post-renovation. The form code I'd already matched in the specimen binder. And the room field R213. It was supposed to be their anchor. It was their hole, because R2XX rooms didn't even exist until after mid-month. And the clerk had already confirmed the oval stamp with the Nick retired late April. The same week my discharge page was like a badge. Their proof said I was in a room that wasn't open when my page was stamped by a stamp that hadn't retired yet. The paper contradicted itself without me touching it that I didn't raise my voice. I raised the binder photo that shows PRE Reno. /##/post Reno. R2 ###. Then placed Ruth's letter beside it. 4 nights at Carol's that line up with my discharge week. I added the parking stub stamped ME East with a date that sits in the middle of those nights like a thumbtack. Then I put down the printout of their first threat letter, not in the county that week, next to the second one, out of state the week prior. 2 clocks. 1 sky. The attorney tried to step between documents with words like context and misunderstanding. Words can't move stamps. He pivoted to tone. Tone can't move dates. I slid the nurse roster photo into the light. L. Garvey, LG, listed on nights that month, and the clerk's note about left-hand loops smudging the carbon. On my page, the LG loop bled like the moon. Paper shook hands with memory. Across the table, Sophie had been quiet, eyes tracing the arrows I'd drawn between stamps and weeks. Max kept one finger on R213 like he was holding it still to see if it would change shape. It didn't. Neither did the silence. That's when Marla arrived. Late on purpose, the way people who hate performances avoid opening acts. She set down her own small notebook, and spoke like a person who has folded enough blankets to know where corners belong. She described the night shift discharge routine, the oval Nick era, and the switch from N to R, 2 rooms, the Monday after the 15th. Her last line landed like a stamp. If your page shows R2, it is after the switch. If your discharge stamp carries the Nick, it is before the stamp retired. Both cannot be true on the same day. N01 asked her to swear to anything. Sophie didn't blink. Max exhaled the way people do when a number stops being a question and becomes a place on a map. Janet tried one last pivot, talked about feelings. About being young, about pressure. Feelings matter. Logs matter more when the room is arguing about the past. She reached for the nursery log again, as if a second look would rearrange the month. It didn't. The attorney closed his folder an inch. You could hear the hinge that I didn't ask for an apology. I asked for a correction. I slid a single page to the middle, chronology, final. 12 lines, 12 dates, 12 sources. If you have a document that contradicts any line, I said, send it to counsel all. If not, we stop calling people liars for reading a calendar. The attorney said he'd review. Janet said nothing. Tom stared at R213 like a man realizing his best argument brought its own receipt. When we stood, Sophie put her palm flat on Ruth's letter, then on my discharge page, as if measuring the distance between a grandmother's underlines and a stamped Nick. We're done pretending the week was somewhere else, she said, to no one and to everyone. Max nodded once, not at me, at the timeline. Outside, the hallway felt wider. Marla squeezed my shoulder, small and solid. Fonts don't forget, she said again, almost smiling. The elevator doors closed on a reflection I recognized. A person carrying a folder that didn't need to be heavy anymore to be true. That night, Sophie and Max sent a joint message to the family thread. It was 12 lines long. Same as mine. Silence didn't mean stop. It meant strategy. 3 days after the meeting, a new email from their attorney arrived with soft edges and sharp center. Subject, resolution proposal. It offered to restore harmony. If I agreed to non-disclosure terms about private family history, withdrew my chronology from circulation, and refrained from contacting extended relatives. In return, they would acknowledge a misunderstanding, stop using words like harassment, and cease further estate communications. It read like a rug big enough to hide a calendar under. I didn't argue philosophy. I answered with 4 sentences that could stand up without me. Facts are not confidences. I will not sign a confidentiality agreement about dates and stamps. All future contact regarding resolution must be in writing to counsel. I will not contact anyone who hasn't contacted me first. Mr. Alvarez echoed it in lawyer, attached our chronology, final, again, and added a line that felt like a deadbolt. Any attempt to condition estate matters on narrative control will be documented. That afternoon, Sophie texted a photo of a cream envelope addressed in looping teacher script, Grandma Ruth. She'd found it in the same cookbook where the first letter lived, tucked behind a recipe for lemon bars. On the back flap, for when the story gets loud. We opened it together at her kitchen table. The one with the tiny gouge where childhood homework once chewed a pencil through the finish to Ruth's second letter wasn't a confession. It was a ledger, a neat list of 4 dates with short notes. Mon, Janet to Carol's, bag with sweater and lotion. Said she'd be back Friday. Tuesday, work near Memorial East. Saw Linda, LG, on break. She said the floor was full. Thursday, met Janet at diner 2 blocks from East. She wore a bandage over the bracelet spot. Paid cash. Friday, bus home at 6:10 a.m. Carol said Janet slept poorly. Asked for my scarf. Wrote, keep on Bill's parking stub. Folded behind the list. A photocopy of that parking stub Ruth had told Carol to save. This time with Ruth's own arrow and the word proof. She had also clipped a church bulletin from that Friday with a date in the corner, the chorus numbers circled. People think evidence is dramatic. Mostly it's paper that knows what day it is. Sophie took a breath, like something finally left her shoulders. She knew it would come to this, she said, more wonder than anger. We scanned the letter. Labeled each line with the corresponding page from my file, Carol's calendar, and the Nick-era stamp note from Memorial East. The clicks sounded almost like a zipper closing, small, exact, inevitable. The pushback came dressed as politeness. Their attorney replied to Alvarez with a revised resolution, no more NDA, but a mutual understanding, to avoid publicized timelines and cease distributing unverified hospital materials. He attached a second copy of the nursery log they'd flaunted at the meeting, this time with a sticky note icon that read, Room R213 confirmed. The confidence would have been funny if it weren't so loud, because that same hour, Memorial East emailed the wing renovation memo Alvarez had requested, a dry, 2-page notice from facilities, nursery wing room numbering transition from N to R to effective Monday, April 16th. On the next page, stamp replacement work order, oval knight stamp, Nick on crown, retired April 24th. 2 sentences, 0 adjectives, dates that don't take bribes that we stitched Ruth's ledger. The renovation memo, and the stamp retirement order into a 1-page timeline image with arrows so clean a stranger could follow it. Mon 16, wing renumbers to R, 2 Friday 20, Ruth writes. Keep on the stub Sun 22, my discharge page shows Oval Nick still in service. Tuesday 24, Oval Nick retired their page claiming R, 213 for a 15th birth now contradicted 3 systems at once. The renumbering date, the stamp's lifespan, and Ruth's ledger that placed Janet in the exact geography. Paper doesn't gloat, but it does align that we sent the image to counsel, all with a subject that didn't blink, 3 independent clocks. Alvarez's body text was 11 words. Our client won't sign silence. Tell the dates to your story. Evening tried to disguise itself as normal. I cooked pasta I didn't taste, set the table for 1, and taped a small copy of 3 independent clocks inside the kitchen cabinet above the spices. Not to admire it, to reach it. Truth belongs at hand height, at 9:37 p.m., Janet wrote directly for the first time since the meeting. You're humiliating us. This could have been private. I read it twice and answered once. It still is. The only public thing is your attempt to make me a liar. I won't be. I CC'd Sophie and Max not to escalate. But because Sunlight keeps stories honest. 10 minutes later, Sophie replied to all with 1 line that felt like a soft gavel. We accept the 3 clocks. Max added, please stop calling him a liar. Alvarez forwarded both to their attorney with a final sentence that closed like a book. Our clients consider this matter settled as to facts. Any further contact should avoid character attacks. The house went still in the way houses do when paper has finally done enough. I washed 2 dishes I hadn't used. then left the 3 clocks print where the morning light would hit it. Not a trophy. A map that IT arrived dressed like a museum plaque. Subject, official family statement. Janet and Tom sent it to a dozen relatives, CC'd a pastor, and BCC'd whoever they hoped would carry it further. The language was polished and distant. In light of recent disruptions, we cherish privacy. Narratives may vary. Then the hinge, in March. Circumstances required discretion regarding a private adoption. March. Our entire file lives in April, Ruth's ledger. Carol's calendar, the ME East stub stamped Friday 20. The wing renumber on Mon 16. My oval nick discharge on Sun 22. The stamp retirement on Tuesday 24. A single word moved the month. And the month pulled the floor out from under their statement that I didn't argue adjectives with a paragraph. I replied with half a page that could stand without me. Subject, chronology, half page, no adjectives. 12 lines. 12 dates. 12 sources. Each line a small stone you can step on. April 16th. Nursery wing renumbers in dash hashtag hashtag hashtag. R2 hashtag hashtag hashtag. Facilities memo. April 16 to 24. Night stamp with oval nick in service. Stamp log. April 18 to 21. Ruth's ledger. Janet at Carol's. LG on break. Bandage over bracelet spot. Keep on parking stub. April 20th. ME East parking stub. Ruth copy. Arrow proof. April 22nd. Discharge page. Oval nick present. LG loop smudged. Left-hand carbon. April 24th. Oval nick retired. Work order. Binder spec. PRE Reno forms use N. Post Reno use R2. Their page R213 nursery log. Post Reno. Attached in prior email. Meeting note. Their counsel asserts 15th. Room code contradicts. R2 opens after 16th. Family email. Prior claim, not in county that week. Later, out of state week prior. Sophie/Max, acknowledge. 3 independent clocks and accept timeline. Clerk letter. Confirms format/stamp alignment with Memorial East April forms. NO opinions. No heat. I closed with one line. If any March document exists, please circulate to council. Also the clocks can meet it. Mr. Alvarez forwarded the half page to the same list with a sentence that sounds like a door settling into its frame. We consider facts closed. Future commentary should avoid misdating events. He attached the 3 independent clocks graphic, Ruth's ledger, and the stamp log again. Paper shoulder to shoulder until spin ran out of places to stand. The thread went quiet in the way rooms do when the last chair is taken by the truth. Then a new email slid in without letterhead. Tom. Directly to me, no one else copied. 5 words that tried to be harmless and told on everything. It was the 3rd week. No month. No apology. Just a sentence that finally matched the calendar without admitting it knew how. I read it twice, let the shape of it settle, and forwarded it to council, all with a subject that didn't raise its voice. Concession implicit. Alvarez replied to the group in plain daylight. Noted. All parties now align on the week. We will not revisit character claims. Sophie texted a minute later. We're done arguing with furniture. Max followed with a photo of the cabinet over his stove. Our half-page chronology taped inside, next to a spice jar. We keep truth where we can reach it, he wrote. Same idea, different kitchen. That night, I printed Tom's 5 words and slid them behind Ruth's letter. Not a trophy. A quiet checkmark. Outside, the street kept its own time. Inside, the folder finally closed without clicking. I wrote it at the same kitchen table where I'd taped 3 independent clocks inside the cabinet. No flourishes. No autopsy of motives. Just a line a person can stand on without holding their breath. Mr. Alvarez trimmed the edges so it would read like daylight and not a diary. At noon, we posted a single public note. Comments off, pinned where relatives who prefer whispers could read it without pretending they hadn't. My name is Noah. I was born in April. The dates we've shared are verifiable. Hospital formats, stamp logs, and a family ledger. I won't argue character. I will not call anyone a liar. I ask the same in return. If you have a date-stamped document that contradicts ours, email it to council. Otherwise, we'll keep love for rooms that can hold IT'd/NO screenshots of people. No theater. We put the facts on a wall and walked away. By late afternoon, a response arrived that tried to move tone where dates had refused. Janet and Tom posted a short paragraph about disappointment and privacy and regret that things became public. They did not say March. They did not say 15th. They did not say liar. It was the closest they could get to silence without turning off the lights that I didn't answer them. I answered the future. I printed our pin note, folded it behind Ruth's ledger, and slid Tom's 5 words. It was the 3rd week. On top like a bookmark that doesn't need to shout to hold the page. That evening, Sophie and Max came by with takeout and quiet relief. We ate on the floor because chairs felt ceremonial and the hunger was ordinary. Sophie brought a small frame with the word keep handwritten in her grandmother's script. For your shelf, she said, for when stories get loud. Before they left, Max taped a copy of the half-page chronology inside our cabinet next to my spices. Different kitchen, same idea. Truth where hands can reach it. He snapped a picture and sent it to his own phone. Backup isn't paranoia. It's kindness to tomorrow. The house settled around us like a book closing. Somewhere, a printer finished a job that could move money but not weeks. I labeled the final folder fonts, stamps, dates, and set it on a shelf at eye level. Not a trophy. A map I would only need if the weather changed again. Some endings aren't loud. They're aligned. You don't win them. You stop arguing with furniture and let the clocks keep time. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story that we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.